Yesterday, I watched a developer use Cursor to generate two simple email functions. 10 seconds later, boom, perfect code. Both functions worked flawlessly. The developer smiled, hit accept, and moved on to the next task. But here's what happened under the hood. The AI had written the same 30 lines of connection logic twice, completely duplicated. Not only that, each function was opening its own separate connection every single time it ran. It's like using two cars every time you go to the same grocery store and transporting only one item in each car. It works, but you've doubled your costs for absolutely no good reason. You could have just put both items into the same car.
That's what's happening to our software right now, and most of us have no idea.
Now, this developer wasn't lazy or careless. They were doing exactly what makes sense when you're trying to ship features fast. And AI promises to handle the details. Test it, confirm it works, ship it. The code behind the scenes? That's the AI's job now, right?
But here's the thing about code. If you don't plan it out strategically, it accumulates. Worse, it becomes less scalable, meaning that if more people use it, it's more likely to break. And it becomes less secure, because vulnerabilities can be easily mass duplicated. Right now, allegedly around 25% of all code at Google and Microsoft is being generated by large language models. That's not a small experiment anymore. That's millions upon millions of lines of code being written by systems that don't understand the bigger picture. They don't see the elegant solution that connects two functions. They don't think about memory usage 6 months from now. They just solve the immediate problem in front of them, every single time, from scratch. Think about what that means in practice. When a human programmer writes code, they're not just solving today's problem. They're thinking about how this piece fits into the system they've been building for months or years. They remember that they already wrote a database connection function last week, so they reuse it. They consider whether this new feature might need to scale to handle 1,000 users instead of 10. They think about the person who might need to debug this code at 2 a.m. 6 months from now. AI doesn't think about any of that. It just generates a solution that works right now in isolation. So, when an AI writes a function to send an email, it creates everything from scratch: connection logic, authentication, error handling, the works. When it writes another function to check email status 5 minutes later, it creates all of that again. Same logic, same patterns, same inefficiencies, multiplied across every single task. Consider the recent METR study that revealed developers are actually 19% slower with AI, even though they feel faster. This striking research showed that experienced developers expected a 24% speed boost from AI tools and subjectively felt like they were working 20% faster after implementation. However, when METR actually measured their performance, these same developers were almost 20% slower than before. Why? They were spending more time prompting the AI, checking its work, fixing errors, and rewriting code, all while feeling more productive than ever. Part of that slowdown isn't just the prompting and error checking. It's the hidden complexity being baked into every solution. When everything works but nothing fits together cleanly, every new feature becomes a little bit harder to build. The code base becomes like a house where every room was designed by a different architect who never talked to the others. So we're not just coding with AI, we're building a mountain of what programmers call tech debt, shortcuts and duplications and inefficiencies that work today, but will make everything harder tomorrow. Except this time, the debt is invisible even to the people creating it. Here's a concrete example of what this looks like in the real world. Let's say you're building an app that needs to connect to a database. A human programmer might write one clean, reusable database connection manager that handles all the messy details: connection pooling, error recovery, security credentials, timeout handling. Then every feature that needs data just calls that one well-tested piece of code. But AI doesn't think that way. When AI generates code for user login, it writes its own database connection logic. When it generates code for saving user preferences, it writes that same logic again. When it generates code for loading user photos, same thing. Suddenly,
You have dozens of slightly different database connections scattered throughout your app, each with their own subtle bugs and security vulnerabilities.
The app still works. Users can log in, save preferences, and view photos. Everything seems fine. But under the surface, you're using 10 times more database connections than you need. Your app is slower and more fragile than it should be. And when you inevitably hit a scaling problem or security issue, you have to hunt down and fix the same bug in dozens of different places. Here's what makes this different from normal tech debt. Usually, when a human cuts corners, they know they're cutting corners. They might leave a comment, "To do, clean this up later." They understand the trade-off they're making between speed and quality. They can explain to their teammate why they chose the quick and dirty approach.
But AI doesn't know it's taking shortcuts. It doesn't even know there's a cleaner way to solve the problem. It just generates code that passes the test, gets approved, and disappears into the system. There's no comment explaining the trade-off. There's no human who remembers why it was built that way. There's just code that works until it doesn't. So we're building on quicksand without realizing it. Every AI-generated function that works perfectly today might be the thing that makes your app mysteriously slow next year. Every duplicated piece of logic is a place where a future bug will hide. Every separate connection is a resource that didn't need to be used. The really scary part, this is happening at scale, not just at your startup or mine. At Google, at Microsoft, at every company that's embracing AI to move faster. We're essentially conducting a massive, uncontrolled experiment with the foundation of our digital infrastructure. And the feedback loops that might warn us about problems are broken. When a human writes bad code, other humans usually catch it in code review. They say, "Hey, this looks like duplicate code we wrote last month. Can we reuse that instead?" But when AI writes code, the humans reviewing it are mostly checking whether it works, not whether it's well designed. They don't have time to understand every implementation detail. They trust the AI to handle the architecture. Meanwhile, the metrics we use to judge AI success, does the feature work? Did we ship on time? Are there any obvious bugs? Don't capture the long-term costs. It's like judging a construction company based only on whether the building stands up on opening day, not whether it'll still be structurally sound in 10 years. Sure, if we're just talking about a simple app or website, maybe it's not the end of the world. So what if your social media feed loads a little slower, or your grocery delivery app crashes occasionally? But what happens when this same approach, AI generating critical code that humans barely review, starts powering the systems we literally trust with our lives? In self-driving cars, aviation, and power grid contexts, invisible rot isn't just technical debt, it's potential catastrophe waiting to happen. We wanted AI to handle the boring details so we could focus on the big picture. Instead, AI is making millions of small decisions that none of us are reviewing, and those small decisions are shaping the big picture in ways we can't see yet. It's like hiring someone to organize your house while you're at work, and they make everything look perfect on the surface, but they've been shoving all the clutter into spaces you never check. Your house feels cleaner and more organized than ever. You're more productive because everything you need is easy to find. Until one day, you need something from the basement and you discover it's completely packed with stuff you can't even identify anymore. And now you can't just clean one room, you have to clear out the entire basement. The irony is beautiful in a terrifying way. We created AI to make us more productive, and maybe it does, for now. But we might be trading today's productivity for tomorrow's maintainability. We might be building systems that work perfectly until they don't. And when they break, we won't understand why, because we didn't write the code that's breaking. This creates a vicious cycle. As code bases become more complex and harder to understand, developers rely even more on AI to help them fix the mess. But that AI-generated fix code adds another layer of complexity.
Soon you have systems that are so complicated that no human fully understands them, maintained by AI that doesn't understand the broader context, creating new features that may work in isolation but make the overall system more fragile.
This isn't about being anti-AI. It's about being honest about what we're actually building when we let machines make all the decisions without context or guardrails. Maybe we need to start treating AI-generated code less like magic and more like a first draft that always needs a human to make it fit elegantly into the bigger picture. Maybe we need new tools that help us see the patterns AI is creating across our code base. Maybe we need to slow down just enough to consider whether AI's solution is not just workable, but wise.
Because the alternative is waking up one day to discover that our beautifully functional software has been quietly falling apart. And by the time we figure it out, the damage is too much to ignore.
Thanks for listening. I'm Luma from This Online Life.